Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Charmaine Mendez, Adult Services Librarian from the Moreno Valley Public Library. This virtual Black History Month showcase is sponsored by the Moreno Valley Friends of the Library, so special thanks to them for their support of this program. So a few announcements before we begin. As a reminder, all of your microphones are muted and your videos are turned off to respect your privacy because this presentation is being recorded. And if you have any questions for our presenter, please leave them in the chat and I'll get them to him, or feel free to unmute your microphone at the end to ask a question out loud if you prefer. Now I'll introduce our special guest. James O. Harris Jr. is the author of the children's book, Welcome to the Adventures of Corey's Courtroom. He can be found reading to children at elementary schools and libraries around the Inland Empire. He conducts workshops and seminars throughout Southern California. Currently, he is the Library Commissioner Chairman for the City of Moreno Valley and a member of the Moreno Valley Scribes. He currently resides in Moreno Valley, California, with his wife of 29 years and is the proud father of 2. Today's presentation on Bass Reeves is part of James Harris's African American History series, Unveiled, which includes presentations of the Green Book, Sundown Towns, Robert Smalls, The Great Migration, Redlining, Pullman Porters, and Restrictive Covenants. Everyone, please welcome our guest speaker for tonight, James Harris. Thank you for being here, James. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you. It's good to see everybody here today. I really appreciate you, you coming out, and let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of Unveiled, History in Focus, featuring Bass Reeves.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and welcome to another episode of Unveiled, featuring Bass Reeves. Before we get started, I just want to give a few thanks. First, I want to thank the Moreno Valley Public Library for hosting me tonight, as well as Friends of the Library, and big props to Charmaine Mendez. She's done a great job of helping me, prepare and just get ready for tonight. So I really appreciate her. And always, I just want to thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your time in your life. The first day of Black History Month. I'm glad that you're here. So I just want to just say I really appreciate it, because I know that you could be doing other things. So I appreciate you being here today. So all right. So with that said, let's get to it. You may have heard of Wyatt Earp, famous lawman of the West. You may have heard of Doc Holliday. You may have heard of Bat Masterson. And you may have even heard of Pat Garrett. But have you actually heard of the greatest lawman who have ever lived, U.S. Deputy Bass Reeves? Bass Reeves, as some consider, will be the greatest lawman of them all. And so hopefully during this presentation, you will hear him, hear his story, first time being introduced to him, and really understand who he was and how he came to be. Before we get started, I'm gonna lay a little foundation, give you some background so we can kind of see how Bass Reeves actually became, Bass Reeves before his legendary feats. So sit back and relax, and we're gonna have a good time. And thank you for, once again, thank you for coming up. So welcome to another presentation of Unveiled, featuring U.S. Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves. It all started in 1868 when Bass Reeves was born. He was born to his father, J.M. Stewart and Pearlie Washington. And so then the question then became, okay, well, if his father's name was Stewart and his mother's name was Washington, how did he get the name Bass Reeves? Good question, glad you asked. Unfortunately, his parents, J.M. Stewart and Pearlie Washington, they were enslaved to a man named William Steele Reeves. Bass received his first name from his maternal grandfather. Bass Reeves, he spelled it B-A-S-S-E, but they shortened it to B-A-S-S when Bass was actually born. So his first name was Bass, but his name wasn't Stewart or Washington because since his parents were enslaved to Mr. William Reeves, who was a Tennessee legislator, I believe. It was tradition at that time that those that were under his tutelage or his servitude received his last name. So that's why he had his name Bass Reeves. And this is just a little record of him during his time. Okay, so this is where the story kind of picks up steam. That's a little background. This little story how it picked up steam. When Bass was 8 years old, William Reeves gave his whole family, which consisted of his mother, father, he had one older sibling, a brother, which is not a whole lot known about him, was given to his son, Colonel George Reeves. So the whole family went to live with the son. And so during that time, he became an actual valet or butler to George Reeves. And he took him everywhere he went. And so he was basically, just like I said, just under his tutelage. So ultimately, he was growing up, and at the age of 24, he was still the colonel's valet, but he took him to fight in the American Civil War. So he was actually fighting on the side of the Confederates at the time. And so things was going on, and he was a young man in his 20s. And then on a fateful night, him and George were playing poker, a card game. Well, how the story goes that ultimately an argument ensued. I guess Bass was winning the card game, was beating him. And so a heated exchange came about, and the colonel actually took a swing at Bass. Instinctively, Bass just swung back and knocked him smooth out. Can you believe that? Knocked him out. So you can imagine what quandary he was in at that time, because he had just hit the person that he was under servitude to. So the first thing he did was he jumped on a horse and ran. That's right there. There we go. You can't see him in the corner, kind of running away. So he ran, but the question is what did he ran to? What did he run away to? Because technically he was a fugitive at this point. Well, what happened is that he ran to the Indian Territory of Oklahoma. And so my first thought was why would he run to Indian Territory? You know, that was my first thought. And then it kind of came to me, because this happened in 1863. Well, a decade earlier, probably around, I think, 1850, there was a Fugitive Slave Act, which simply said if there was a runaway slave, whether in a free state or a free state, you had to bring him back to his owner. So he really couldn't go back to those states. So he said, okay, so he headed just straight for the Indian Territory, because not like he had people there. So he just ran straight to the Indian Territory, and he was essentially kind of a free man at that time. And so I was kind of going through my head, I wonder what it would like to just, you run away and you go to Indian Territory. But it was better than what he knew if he stayed. One, if he stayed, wait for the colonel to wake up, you can understand the repercussions that would probably happen to him. And he understood the gravity of what was going to go on if they found out that he had struck the colonel. So that's why he ran away to the Indian Territory. And all this is starting to shape Bass. I have some folks coming in. I'm just trying to get them in. Okay, here we go. Okay, so when he ran our way to the Indian territory, this is who he encountered. He encountered the Creek tribe, the Cherokee tribe, Chickasaw tribe, and the Seminole tribe. And so when he came across all these Indians in Indian territories, it was interesting is that they looked upon him as somebody kind of just like them, the same situation. And they're like, hey, you know what, you're kind of fighting the same, you're running away from the same person that we're kind of fighting against, because at that time they're settling and there was, you know, fights between the Indians and the other folks in the region. And so they warmly embraced Bass. They figured, hey, you're running away from something, so, you know, come on and live with us. And so with Bass, they, let me make sure I get this in here. So Bass was so happy that they came and welcomed him as much as they did, that he just absorbed their culture. He just became one of them. They loved him, he loved them. It was just, you know, mutual respect. And so during that time, they taught him how to hunt, how to shoot, how to track, how to ride a horse. They showed him all the things in order to be able to survive in the wild in the West, plus all the skills that the Indian had. And so he was having a great time. He wasn't under no longer any servitude. He was living among the Indians. And at that time, since he was you know, he had been a slave for all those years, he was virtually illiterate. He never really learned how to read or write. But it didn't matter because he had high intelligence and he actually was very observant, and he was a really quick learner, because during that time that he was with these tribes, he learned to speak 5 Native American languages and became fluent in Muskogee. And so that tells you that just how naturally intelligent he was. And so he learned how to shoot and he learned how to fight. And so during this time, he found his natural aptitude for firearms. And he used to shoot and practice every day his marksmanship, to the point that they used to have the Indians had a contest called the turkey shoot. They would line turkeys up on a string, hang them upside down. And so you'd have to ride by and just shoot the heads off the turkeys in order, you know, to win. He was so good at it, he was so great at it, that the Indians, the Native Americans, banned him from that competition. Can you believe that? Being banned from the competition. He became such an expert in shooting that he could shoot with either hand. He was ambidextrous. And you know how most of the, you see a lawman or an old Western, they had their barrels of the handles of the gun facing them. His was actually facing out. And he had a cross draw, which allowed him to shoot faster. They said he could shoot the hind legs off of a fly, or shoot a spider's web without having to move. He became an expert marksman. And things were great. He learned their ways, they learned him, and everything was just going super fantastic, and he was just happy living among the Indians. And then there became a change that would start eventually to change his life. Here. It was 1863, and President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So essentially, you know, he was a free man, you know, along with in 1865, 2 years later, the 13th Amendment came about, but he was, you know, virtually free. So at that point, he said, you know, okay, I can go back to the states, or at the time, the territories at the time, and kind of start, you know, living my life again. So what he did was he bid goodbye to the Indians, and moved on himself and moved on to Van Buren, Arkansas. And so when he was there, he was like, okay, I'm here, I'm a free man, bought a little piece of land, built a house on it. And so the first thing he did after that was, guess what? Went and got him a wife, all right? So he went, got him a wife, and he married Nellie Jenny. And guess what? She was a Creek woman. which makes sense because this prior year, this whole year, he had lived among the Indian nations. And so he became familiar with them. They liked him. He was all good. So things were going good. He was a rancher. He was a farmer. He had all his kids. Everything was going great. And life was good with him. Let me turn this in. I have a few people still kind of coming to the wedding. Give me a moment. And so everything was just going completely fantastic. He had his wife, he had his kids, things were going good. He had 11 kids. One of the kids' name was Benny, and we're going to speak to them a little bit later in the presentation about Benny. But you know, things were good. I like when they had a description of his wife. They said she was a tall and she was statuesque, really good-looking woman. So you know, he was kind of balling out of control. Well, then this is when his life really started to change. In March of 1875, Ulysses S. Grant handpicked Isaac Parker. His name was Isaac Charles Parker. And you may not have heard that name, but he was called by another name, the hanging judge. Have you heard that, the hanging judge? Well, Grant handpicked Parker to be over the Eastern District of the Indian Territory. And the reason why he did that was because the West was out of control. You heard the term the Wild Wild West. What happened in the Indian territories, there were technically like no lawmen, no law. You could go there, kill, destroy, plumage, and there was really no lawmen out there because federal land was so vast. Most of them hadn't even became states yet. So it was just a vast land of Indians, and if you want to shoot somebody, you know, go for it. And so Grant was like, okay, we need to clean this up. So he knew of Judge Parker's reputation, that he didn't take no mess, he didn't play. And so what he did was he just appointed Mr. Parker. And so Judge Parker said, okay, all right, so how do I clean up this Indian territory? Well, the first thing he did was he sworn in Mr. James Fagan and said, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go out and recruit 200 brand new deputies in order to help clean up the West. And we're going to talk about the high morbidity rate they had among marshals. But he was like, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go out and I want you to get and find and go out of the land and start looking for 200 new deputies. So at that, he said, okay, let me go out. So as he was going out, that's my Wild West. It was really crazy out there. So as he was going out, he was scouring and he kept hearing about this man named Bass Reeves. And he kept hearing this from the locals. What the locals were saying that, hey, there's a guy out there, he speaks 5 languages. He knows Indian territory. And matter of fact, even Bass had even said that he knew the territory, Indian territory, as well as he knew as a cook knew his kitchen. He just knew it real well. So he met Bass, spoke to him, and was just blown away by not only his knowledge of the West, the Indians, but also his marksmanship and how he could ride. But he also had another attribute that helped Bass. What happened was that during this time when Bass was just a rancher with his kids and, you know, blacksmith and that thing, he also had a side hustle as doing like delivery work. He was working for the marshal's office because he knew so much about the Indian territory. He knew so much about how the Indians worked. He had connections, and Fagan was like, you know, I could really use this guy. So he went and said, you know what, okay, Bass Reeves, I think I want you to join us. And so on May 10th, 1875, Bass Reeves became a U.S. Marshal. And this is where he took his oath. And just to kind of show you just how fast things went, when President Grant first spoke to Judge Parker, that was in May. 2 months, that was in March. 2 months later, Bass was sworn in. And I don't want you to lose the gravity of the moment. This is actual him signing in. Even though he was a little illiterate, he could still at least kind of make out his name. But now you had an ex-slave, actually an ex-fugitive runaway slave, who was now a farmer and now just became a federal U.S. Marshal with police powers. So technically, he could really go, and if his old, person that he was under, Mr. Reeves, did something wrong, he could actually arrest him. Can you believe that? So can you just imagine what was going through his mind of the pride he felt that now he was a U.S. Marshal. And this is his area. He covers roughly 75,000 square miles that he had to cover. And so deputies they had a lot of duties, but one of the duties was go out, and once you were given a writ, and what a writ was like a letter, was like a warrant, and it had your name on it. They would give you the writ. You had like 30 days to go execute that writ. And once you get it, you brought the person in, you get paid for that. They were giving us a little stipend, but also they got paid for it as well. So the more writs you did, the more, money you could get. And so he was like, this is the best man I ever had. So yeah, he never turned down a writ. So here, this is a few of the 200 deputies sworn in at the time. And so you see a few African Americans deputies here, but Bass was the first Black U.S. deputy west of the Mississippi. So not only he was a lone African American, I'm sure he also felt alone. And so the other deputies, African American deputies, they were east of the Mississippi. When I was looking at that picture of Bass right there to my right, to your left, I seen his hair, and I was like, "Hey, is that Bass with the S curl?" Okay, for those who are born and grew up in the '80s, you know what I'm talking about. So anyways, so that was Bass, and this is him taking this picture with his deputies that were getting sworn in. During his tenure, 34 years, 30 plus years, he arrested over 3,000 outlaws and killed 14 men as U.S. Marshal in 32 years, more than any other lawman in history. And we're going to talk about that as we go through this presentation. 3,000 men, he arrested 3,000 men, a lot of writs, and 14 men. It's interesting when I seen this is that when they speak about famous lawmen of the Old West, you see some of these people down here, like we spoke about Bat Maxson, Pat Garrett, he's the one who killed Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, Wild Bill Hickok, Doc Holliday. You hear that for the OK Corral and those type of things, but you never hear about Bass Reeves. But here they have him among those great lawmen. And right next to there are great, a lot of infamous criminals as well. Butch Cassidy, Billy the Kid, Cherokee Bill. Cherokee Bill, as a matter of fact, he was an outlaw, and Judge Parker hung him and his whole crew. I think it's like 8 of them on the same day. He didn't play. If you got a writ, you got caught. You go to front of Judge Parker, the hanging judge. It's pretty much a wrap. An interesting story here, we're gonna look at it real quick, is that you see Belle Starr. Belle Starr here, she's the only female that was listed. And some of you may have heard about Belle Starr. I want to touch on her real quick and show you her connection with Bass. See, Belle Starr, you may have seen some of her movies there back in the 50s, 40s, 50s. She was known as the Bandit Queen, and she was considered like a famous outlaw. What's interesting about her is that she was married to Sam Starr. He was like a real bad outlaw. She was an outlaw too, but kind of like more of a low level, just more like aiding and abetting, maybe hiding some folks, rustling horses, but she wasn't really hardcore. She had spent time in some prison, some jail, and he knew her, but she wasn't really super, notorious. So the question is, how did she become such a legend where they're having movies made out of her and posters and things like that, and they compare her to Jesse James. Well, one of the reasons that actually she was shot and found dead, being shot in the back and in her back and in her head. And so how the story goes, a dime store novice kind of picked up her story and then kind of made her life bigger than it really was and kind of analogized her to Jesse James. And all of a sudden it took on a whole new life as a female bandit. So that's how she kind of came to be, Belle's star, and movies came out about her. What was interesting is that Bass knew her. And so during the time, a writ came down, and he knew a writ was coming down for her, and he never turned down the writ. So he actually came to her and said, hey, you know what, let's stay with both some time. I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna take you in, so why don't you just go ahead and turn yourself in? He kind of gave her like a little heads up. So she was like, okay. Well, she ended up running. So he said, okay. So about 14 days later, he tracked her down. No, 14 days later, he didn't track her down, as a matter of fact. 14 days later, she turned herself in. And what she said, they said, well, why did you turn yourself in? She goes, I just didn't want to get brought in by another deputy, like by Bass. And, she knew Bass was going to get her sooner or later. So she said, let's just go ahead and do it. And there are other stories about that, like that as well. There was one gentleman that Bass was after him. He knew that there was a writ out for his arrest. And they said that he was tossing and turning, having night dreams and screams, and woke up in a sweat of blood. And he ended up turning himself in to the authorities as well. Just kind of shows a little insight of just how respected he was in terms of what he did. They said he was cordial, he was kind, he was hardcore. His mother said he could spit and break a brick, but when it came to the law, and we're gonna see this in a minute, when it came to the law, there was no exceptions. The law was the law, and if you broke it, I'm not gonna judge you. He never judged you on why you broke it. He just knew that you did. It was writ from you, and he just brought you in. I just wanted to show you just a few of the articles of his 3,000 arrests. Here on the top to my right, it says Reeves often used stealth, cunning, and disguises to capture outlaws. He once disguised himself as an outlaw to capture two brothers to chagrin of the mother, who had unwittingly encouraged him to join up with her outlaw sons. She followed Reeves and her handcuffed sons for 3 miles, cursing all the way. So what he did was he dressed up like a hobo, because he was 6'2", 200 pounds, African-American man. And he rode a white and gray horse. So he was a very imposing figure. So in order for people not to really look at him as a lawman, he would dress down and wear all kind of different type of disguises and masks and helmets and whatever, dressed up. Here's another one. It says in the middle, it says charge of forgery. Lydia Grayson was arrested yesterday by Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves on charge of forgery in connection with land transaction. George Grayson's husband, Lydia, was arrested on the same charge Friday. And just kind of, we go to my left, it says Mathis was bound over on assault to kill by Commissioner Hoy. He was alleged assaulted his wife in January. Bass Reeves arrested him last night. And here, the last one I want to show you. Says during his lifetime, Reed had some mighty close calls. His belt was shot in two once. His hat brim shot away. A button on his coat was shot off. His bridle rein and his hands were shot in two. And he never had the blood drawn in a fight. And 14 men in all had their lives snuffed out by his deadly gun. And in not a single transaction did he ever shoot at a man until the other fellow started first. And that's true. He never shot first. He never shot first, and he never got shot. He got a hold of his hat, maybe his reins, a button blown off his shirt, but he never, ever actually, was shot. So I really thought that was really telling just what a good marksman he was. And these are just some of the articles that I kind of looked at. God, I'd never even seen these when I was growing up. I've never seen these type of articles. Okay, here, Bob Dozier was one of the most notorious outlaws out there. And so he was famous. He was a famous outlaw, and he had eluded deputies for years. So Bass received the writ and went after him. And he had eluded Bass for years as well. So I just kind of want to show you this little video here of kind of story of how this encounter actually turned out.
For years, the writ I carried for the notorious outlaw Bob Dozier had been burning a hole in my pocket. I had never been closer to him than I was in that forest, deep in the Indian territory. He was quick and crafty, but he had one key weakness: arrogance, and I exploited it.
Bob Dozier came out from his hiding spot, confident, happy that he had hit his target.
Dozier can't believe his luck that he shot the famed Black Marshal Bass Reeves, so he's walking up on the body and laughing because he's thinking, man, I've built my reputation. I've shot Bass Reeves.
I told you, you ignorant black bastard, I was gonna kill you if you ever caught up to me.
Bob Dozier was quite amused at this turn of events, but this time I knew that I would have the last laugh.
Bob Dozier came up to check on his kill, and when he got too close, Bob Dozier ended up the one dead.
Dozier foolishly assumed he had gotten him.
Reeves was just, pretending.
And that's the first and last encounter that they had together.
There is no outlaw or warrant that I fear, no writ that I will refuse. But there once was one that I couldn't help but dread. Good to see you, Deputy.
Bass, I've got something here that I don't know about showing to you. A writ.
Come on now, Sam. Since when am I afraid of a writ?
I didn't want to have to do this, but none of the other deputies would take it.
And although Bass could not read, he looked at the paper and was able to make out the word Reeves.
It's Benny.
It was an arrest warrant for his own son.
Benny?
He was wanted for murder.
I'm sorry. Apparently there was some altercation with his wife.
Nobody wanted to pick up the warrant, none of the other deputies, because they knew Bass, they respected him.
Suddenly, I was forced to choose between upholding the law or protecting my family. The choice was clear. But that doesn't mean it was easy.
He takes the writ and goes after his own son.
Wow, that must have been really, really hard.
For the notorious, I've never been closer to him.
Let me get out of here. Go to my next. Yeah. So he actually went out and arrested his own son here. And this is Benny, one of his 11 kids. Well, how the story goes was that Benny had been having trouble with his wife, that he had caught her on numerous occasions cheating on him. And this one last time, he walked in on him, beat him up, and actually killed her. And so when that was known, then they had the writ sent out. And here you can see on the side, it says a warrant for the arrest of young Reeves for the murder of his wife had been issued and Marshal Bennett said that perhaps another deputy had better be sent to serve it. Bass was in the room and quietly said, "Give me the writ." He went out and arrested his son. The deputies, like Pete said, the deputies were so respectful of Bass that no one wanted to do it. So they actually gave him the writ. So actually, when he went out to arrest his son, he was gone. He had fled too. So during the night, his son Benny woke up to hearing his dad's voice, and his dad's voice was like, either you come with your hands up or you're going to come laying out. So Benny came out, and Bass did like he did for every other criminal 3,000 that he did. He gave them a writ, and the writ you had to sign the location, Muskogee, and who arrested you, and he put Bass Reeves, my father. He ended up serving probably like 12 years in jail, convicted of the murder of his wife. He was released on good behavior and was a model citizen after that. You never heard anything about Benny Reeves. But this is show you just how he felt when it came to the law, especially from his background. The law was everything, and he was not going to violate his oath of duty. Here, I thought this was really interesting. Here, this is the article where Bass even arrested the minister that baptized them. Can you believe that? Here it says, Reverend Wilson Hobson, a Negro Baptist preacher, was arrested here Monday, charged with selling liquor. He was placed under $500 bond. It's claimed by the members of Hobson's church that he sold liquor to the members in order to get money to pay off the church debt. So actually the church folks were okay with it. The members drank the whiskey and were perfectly willing that their pastor should sell it to them so long as the money went to pay off the church debt. Hobson was arrested by Bass Reeves, a Negro deputy marshal who was baptized by Hobson 3 years earlier. Can you believe that? From the teacher to the preacher, if you broke the law, Bass was going to arrest you. It didn't matter. And that's my little gift in the corner of, the minister going to jail. But that just shows you just how focused and how relentless he was and how he truly believed in the letter of the law. He believed that I didn't care who you are, what status you are, even my family, my friends, the preacher who baptized me, if you committed a crime, then you need to be arrested and face charges for this crime. So just kind of give you a little bit of his character that you may not have known or heard about when you hear about Bass Reeves. And this was his motto. He said, maybe the law ain't perfect, but it's the only one we got. And without it, we got nothing. And this is actually his six-shooter, his bullets, and his badge. And he believed that. Maybe the law ain't perfect, but it's the only one we got, and without it, we got nothing. He truly believed that. There are movies based on his life. In the middle is Delroy Lindo. He played Bass Reeves as a character in the Netflix movie, The Harder They Fall. It's a fictitious movie about African-American lawmen and outlaws of the West. And so you kind of see how he was always dressed. He was always immaculately dressed. He always had the black hat, the handlebar mustache. I tried to grow that handlebar mustache. My wife said, no, thank you. He always had shirts were pressed and clean, shoes polished. I always wondered, I don't know how he did that in the West with all that dirt, but he did. You see that on the side, it says crossing the deadline, the guns of Bass Reeves. Well, the deadline was the outlaws said, okay, from Fort Smith, where he was based out at, you got 80 miles out. After that was the deadline. If you cross any further than that, then what the outlaws did, can you believe this? What the outlaws did, they wouldn't place little cars up on trees and posts. with Bass Reeves' name on it, and other deputies as well, saying that if you cross this line, you're like fair game, and we can kill you. I mean, can you imagine outlaws saying, you know, this is our turf, you can't even go over there? So he had like 12 to 15 of these cars out there. But like you said, he was never shot. And one of the reasons why that's important was, or shot dead, you know, that was important as well, is that there was a high morbidity rate among the deputies. Like a 24 year period, there was over 103 deputies killed. Like I say, it was the Wild Wild West. And so what you saw, they really believe that this is our turf, that's your turf, don't cross it. So here at the bottom, you know, Bass Reeves, these are movies you can look up about him. The Lawman. Here is a Denzel Washington character in the Magnificent Seven was based on Reeves in every way except the name. Bass, you know, I talked about, but as you can kind of see just how Denzel kind of resembled Bass Reeves in terms of the black hat, the mustache, you know, the black clothes, and you know, hardcore. They said the Django was kind of patterned after him as well. You know, so you kind of see what's going on here. I want to show you just a quick little video real quick. Let's see how this works.
New Netflix drama called The Harder They Fall will feature a very familiar Fort Smith resident. British actor Delroy Lindo will play U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves in that film. Born a slave in Crawford County in 1838, Reeves became the first black U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River in 1875. He's credited with the arrest of more than 3,000 outlaws. Fort Smith Mayor George McGill says he's hopeful the film will honor Reeves and his work.
Netflix is going to do a short miniseries dealing with the Old West. And in it, they're going to feature our favorite hero, U.S. Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves. My hope is that they depict him the way he really was.
Harder They Fall expected to be released on Netflix toward the end of this year.
And you can see that it is on Netflix. I did happen to see it myself, and it's really good. So, like I said, there's a lot of buzz about him that you may not have recognized, but he's coming more and more into people's forefront. Let me, my computer kind of froze up a minute. Let me see if I get him going here.
British.
Oops. Let me escape here. Go to next. Okay, let me go back here real quick. Get back into my PowerPoint. Okay, it is widely believed that the Lone Ranger was based after Bass Reeves. And so I read a lot of different articles and different books. One is called Black Gun, Silver Star by Art Burton. And he chronicles how all the similarities and everything was based on that 1949 series, the 50 series about the Lone Ranger. And it's interesting because Bass was like 6'2", 200 pounds, little white horse, you know, but he also worked with deputies, a deputy that was also of an Indian heritage, who was shorter, like 5'8", squatty, wore the hat. And so they worked a lot, because a lot of times deputies just didn't work alone. When they had to get a few of the outlaws that were out, they had folks to kind of help him. So a lot of mention when I'm doing all my research is that he was actually the original Lone Ranger, at least what it was based on. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, and when you do a little research on yourself, you can kind of get an idea for yourself. It was interesting when I was learning about the Lone Ranger, and you know, they used to call him Kimosabe, and Tonto was his running mate. I was in my writing class, and we had somebody of Hispanic descent, and he said, "We don't like the name Tonto. We don't like Tonto. We never liked that." I said, "Well, why not? Why like Tonto? You know, he really helped the Lone Ranger." So I guess in Tonto, it means something different. It means like dumb or stupid person. I could imagine that that's what he was calling him during all this time. I did look up some native Indian dialect to see if that was the same translation, and I found that some iterations was wild one and something different. So I wasn't sure if that actually was the case, but I thought that was interesting, getting from a different perspective, and that's why I liked having diversity of audiences, because they always give me feedback on what they may know that I thought that was interesting. Let me kind of give you another little video real quick here, and we'll be on our way.
The Lone Ranger.
This is a story of one of the most mysterious characters to appear in the early days of the West. He was a fabulous individual, a man whose presence brought fear to the lawless and hope to those who wanted to make this frontier land their home. He was known as the Lone Ranger.
Who was Bass Reeves? Well, he's the real Lone Ranger. I think he needed to be accepted a long time ago in our history. The fact that he's gone unrecognized this far is astounding to me. We've honored George Washington Carver. We've honored Martin Luther King. But where's Bass Reeves? He's almost all but forgotten.
What's amazing is that the story with Bass Reeves is the fact that for my entire life, I thought the Lone Ranger was white. When Danica approached me about this project and told me that the real Lone Ranger, Bass Reeves, was actually African American, not only was that a stunning revelation, but it surprised me the fact that how come no one's teaching this in school? How come we're not learning about this on the news or the History Channel, Discovery Channel?
As far as I know, there have only been 3 books ever published about him, and they're all out of print, and 1 independent film made about him, which nobody I know has ever heard of. And that's it. But to find out that our Lone Ranger, this fictional legendary character, could actually be based off a real person was pretty incredible to me. So I looked into it. According to the stories, he never got shot, he never got wounded. One day he got a hole blown through his hat and a button blown off. That's about it.
What I had no idea about is that he was actually a slave at first who eventually found his way to being a deputy, which in the 1800s was a near impossibility.
The stories say he was the man who never shot first. He always tried the diplomatic solution. According to legend, he had literally thousands of people under arrest.
This book, Black Gun, Silver Star, was written by historian Art T. Burton. We're raising funds to be able to meet with Art T. Burton, to travel to Arkansas to visit the only museum I know of that might showcase Bass Reeves, and to go to Washington, D.C. to see the document that Bass Reeves signed, making him a deputy U.S. Marshal.
It amazed me that there has not been a real documentary about Bass Reeves yet, one that actually sought out the truth and looked to shed light on the subject that he was a real man and that we should be recognizing him for who he really was.
And so what are we going to find when we go to Arkansas? Are the legends true? Are we going to uncover more than what we expected? There's really no telling. And that's what's got me really excited about this project, is because there is so much that's still untold about him.
To me, it's not about whether we're ready or otherwise. It's just about honoring an important man in our history. We need your help. Help us discover the man behind the legend.
So really, most of what we know about the Lone Ranger is false.
I just, I kind of felt the kind of same way they did, in the sense that it's really interesting of the information that's out there that's just starting to come out that you really didn't know about. So when I was thinking about my presentation, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be just all biased. So let me kind of give you some of my observations. So this is me, Shanae may, that's me kind of thinking about it, and me at the bottom. Okay, so these are just my observations. He's the only Black deputy marshal west of the Mississippi. He was a lone Black marshal. He never shot first, same as the Lone Ranger in the series, both the same. Wore disguise to capture criminals. Lone Ranger wore a mask. Rode a gray or white horse. The Lone Ranger rode a white horse. Had an Indian marshal to help at times. The Lone Ranger had an Indian companion. Paid with silver coins. The Lone Ranger always left a silver bullet as a signature. So when I was kind of looking at it and looking at everything, and I'm like, yeah, I believe, in my opinion, that he was the Lone Ranger. He was, and the series was actually based on him. Bass retired in 1907 at the age of 70. And so, the question was, well, he's so great, why did he retire? Well, interesting happened in 1907, actually Oklahoma became a state. And so when they became a state, they took over the police powers. And so when they took over the police power, they actually disbanded the federal marshals for that district, over the Indian Territory. And so now he's left to, what to do. So he became a beat cop in Muskogee, in the city of Muskogee. And so he was getting older, like I said, he was 7 years old, but can you imagine someone like them who's used to arresting and being out in the open, now having to be just a beat cop in Muskogee? But even at that, his reputation preceded him. And not a single crime was committed in his patrol area while on duty. So even though he was, a street cop and no longer just a federal deputy marshal, he still upheld his oath. In 1989, he was forced to retire due to health reasons. He passed peacefully at his home on January 10th, 1910 from Bright disease, a kidney disorder. I was looking for his actual burial plot and they couldn't find it. What he was buried was in a Black cemetery at the time. They were segregated. So his body hasn't, at least his headstone hasn't actually been found. But they know that he's buried there. They have a statue of Bass, and this is just the making of it. Here they're going to honor him in Arkansas with an actual statue. I didn't know there was a statue of Bass. Here is his Bass and his dog, and they used to sing praises to him. So this is the actual monument that's in Fort Smith, Arkansas. What's interesting about that dog, you don't usually see statues with animals with them. Well, here he loved animals, and he had seen someone abusing a mother who just gave a litter of puppies, and he took the weapon from him and said, "I'm gonna do to you what you did to the dog." And he said, "You better not hurt these animals anymore." So he picked them all up, gave him a few silver coins, and took one of the dog puppies himself. And I believe that's why he's depicted with the puppy here. And so he had a dog with him. At the bottom here on June 1st, 2012 was an actual unveiling. And I'm gonna show you that real quick.
Well, a local and national hero is being honored this weekend. Bass Reeves was a U.S. Marshal who became a legend after capturing thousands of criminals in the late 1800s. Today in Fort Smith, a statue was unveiled in his honor, and 4029's Kirsten Holmes was there for the ceremony. Watch this.
Arkansas has a local hero who was second to none during the frontier era of American history.
Hundreds of people, politicians, historians, and even 4029's Angela Taylor came out to Pendergraft Park to celebrate the unveiling of the Bass Reeves Monument.
Kind of surreal, really. So much enthusiasm and people are really happy about what's going on.
Harold T. Holden is a sculptor of the monument that now overlooks downtown Fort Smith.
My plan was that I hope everyone is pleased with it. There's more people here then than at most of my other unveilings.
The dedication featured appearances by Reeves' own descendants, and there were tributes to Reeves through song.
The legend of Bass Reeves.
I started researching Bass Reeves, trying to find out who he was, what he did. As the research went on, it became more and more apparent that he was very special and was probably the greatest frontier hero in American history.
Bass Reeves scholar Art Burton has written 2 books on Reeves' life and legacy.
There's newspaper stories from all around the United States during the time of his life, and it's quite illuminating. The more he's embraced by the local community in which he lived, that helps establish who Bass Reeves is, and I do believe that that's going to blossom, and we will get more of a national perspective on Bass. We have a statue now to represent him that we can all come and see and point to and say that's a true American hero.
Kirsten Holmes, 4029 News.
And you can see the Bass Reeves Monument for yourself in Pendergraft Park in downtown Fort Smith.
Bass even has a bridge named after him. So you go to that part of the country, you may be going across the Bass Reeves Bridge and not even know it. They have plaques, they have coins made after him, they had initiatives brought on behalf. You know, it's interesting that when doing this research, you learn so much about someone that you never knew anything about. And there's a lot of folks that do, but like I said, I like when he said bring national attention, and that's what we're trying to do here. Well, that's what I'm also trying to do with my Unveiled presentation. Did you know Bass even had a gun club? I was like, wow. At the bottom of it, it said, fearless, not knowing, no master but duty. I want you to just keep that in the back of your head because you're gonna hear that language again. But yeah, so they actually have a gun club established in 2015. There are even comics out about him now. Found out about that. I was like, oh man, I remember these books, seeing them, The Talented 10th. And yeah, they actually had cartoons about him. So the question is that, you know, when I'm thinking about this, who was Bass Reeves? You know, I'm thinking all these different adjectives. And so if you're thinking about Bass Reeves, I wanted to leave you with something. When they were talking about his death, they said, and this was in the Muskogee Phoenix, 2 days after he passed. They say, in the history of the early days of eastern Oklahoma, the name of Bass Reeves had a place in the front ranks among those who cleansed out the old Indian territory of outlaws and desperados. No story of conflict of government officials with those outlaws can be complete without mention of the man who died yesterday. During that time, he was sent to arrest some of the most desperate characters that ever infested Indian territory and endangered lives and peace in his borders. He was a unique character, absolutely fearless, and knowing no master but duty. We heard that on the patch for the gun show, the gun club, and the placing of a ring in his hands meant that the letter of the law would be fulfilled. He faced death 100 times with a simple faith that some men who believe that they are in the care of special providence when they are doing right. I just thought that was so apropos. So when I was thinking about, okay, well, who is Bass Reeves? And so many things was, you know, running through my mind. You know, he was fearless, he was cunning, he was indomitable, he was a hero. He was just simply, you know, an American hero, an American hero. And so I just can't believe just how great this American hero was. Well, that's my time for tonight. My name is James Harris, and this has been a U.S. Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves Unveiled. If you have any questions, just stay on. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I appreciate you staying with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. What a really informative presentation. Does anyone have any questions or comments for James? Feel free to unmute yourselves, unmute your microphone, or you could put your questions in the chat and I will get them to him. So we have some positive comments in the chat. Lisa says great presentation, and Eugene says thank you to you and very nice. Autumn said the presentation was very informative. I definitely agree with that. Did anyone have any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
Eugene. The question is, did any of his 11 children follow in his footsteps as lawmen?
Great question. Thank you, Gene. For what I found out, what I researched, the answer was no. I didn't see any actual linkage or lineage from Bass Reeves to other children. But yeah, good question. One mistake I said earlier, I said, let me correct it. He was born in 1838 in Crawford. I think I said another number. But yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
I have a question, James.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was noticing, let's see, Muskogee, is that? Muskogee is in Oklahoma?
I believe it's Arkansas.
Oh, I thought the Fort Smith, is that in Arkansas?
Yes.
But he did most of his work in at the Oklahoma territory?
Yeah, the Indian Territory, Oklahoma. You know, he had a vast range. It was 7,500 miles that he actually covered. He was responsible for.
But he was buried in Arkansas.
Yeah, because that's where he passed that when he was an officer of Muskogee.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, great question. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. That was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I was curious about that photo that you had up. I thought maybe it was Nat Love, the one with the hair. Was that him, or that was?
For what I understand, that was him.
Okay. Okay. You did a wonderful. I mean, you got so much resources. That's wonderful. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good research. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. This is Rose. I enjoyed it. I came in, I had problems with hearing at the beginning, so I had to go out and then go to another source to hear, but I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up, for participating, Rose. I know you had another commitment, so I appreciate you coming back on.
Thank you, James. I had a class too, but I think it was worth it.
Oh, thank you. Who am I speaking with?
Howard.
Oh, thank you, Howard. Thank you.
Yeah, I got through. Shemaine got me through.
Thank you, Shemaine. Yeah, Shemaine did a wonderful job.
Yes, you sure did.
You're very welcome.
Did a good job.
Thank you.
James, this is Ray and Brenda. We really enjoyed the presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's a little bit different that we don't know about, huh? Somebody we haven't really learned about.
No. And I used to love watching The Lone Ranger, but I think when I watch it now, I'll see it in a different light.
Hey, James.
Yes, who am I speaking with?
This is Ray.
Oh, hey, Ray.
Hey, did he ever, at any time, team up with another marshal to hunt down anybody?
Yes, frequently they did. When they had multiple writs. Back in the day, we see them going out on chuck wagons. They would have a cook, chuck wagons, and even like a little makeshift jail with them. And so, yeah, so a lot of times they would have to go out with other deputies to get multiple folks.
Okay.
Yeah, one of those was with an Indian, a Native American that helped him to arrest some folks. That's why they got the Lone Ranger type of analogy too.
Yes.
So yeah, but a lot of times he was on his own.
Okay.
He was crafty and he was smart, and yeah, he was something else. And he could shoot. That man could shoot. I had so many stories I could tell you, but I was limited in time. But how he rescued people from hanging. He would shoot down the rope like you see in the movies.
Yeah.
And he would shoot them down, but he would take them to the local sheriff. Because he didn't say like, okay, I don't think you did or didn't do it. It's just you need a trial before anything happens. He was just a letter of the law, you know. And believe it or not, because being African American, the only one out there, he faced a lot of prejudice too. And there one time he was arresting someone, a white outlaw, and the local white officers started to give him some grief, and it was actually a standoff that they're going to start shooting because they didn't like him, an African American, bossing around, a Caucasian. So a senior deputy actually came in and squashed it. But yeah, he had a tough road. Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, James, this is Eugene again. Hey, you know what? Again, I want to say thank you. I enjoyed this so much. I am a Western buff. I've been watching Westerns all my life. And I watch them today. I have, the Western channel. I watch Westerns all day. And I've never come across Bass Reeves in all of my viewing.
Wow.
Westerns in all my years, And again, I'm 62 years old. I've watched a lot of Westerns. And so this was great.
Amen. No, I couldn't believe it. I thank you, Eugene. How did you hear about me, Eugene?
How did I hear about you?
Yeah.
I am your daughter's former teacher.
Oh, Sergeant Wright. See, I call him Sergeant Wright.
Yes. And I live around the corner from you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I never heard of Bass Reeves either. And that's why I appreciate my audience. They send me, I had two things today. People send me, hey, have you heard about this guy? And I was like, no. So I started doing research. That's my thing. And yeah, really phenomenal. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed their presentation. Thank you.
Yes, amen. Sherilyn says she enjoyed it as well.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
James, I wanted to read a question to you in the chat. So from Autumn says you would look great with a Bass Reeves mustache, and also asked you, what made you pick Bass Reeves to unveil?
That is a great question, Autumn, because originally I had another presentation I was going to actually do to tell you the truth. But what happened is that someone said, hey, James, on a text, hey, did you know about this guy? And I looked at it and I said, no. So I just kind of started doing some cursory research on him. And he was so fascinating. And then with that movie, The Harder They Fall, came out with on Netflix, and he was in it. And I was like, I think this would just be a perfect marriage between what's out there now and this presentation. And so that's why I picked Bass Reeves. And I said I never knew about him. I always loved the Long Range as well. And just his story and how much I learned about him, I was like, folks need to know about him. And it seems like through the gun clubs and magazines and some monuments, other people know about him, but I didn't. And I was like, okay, if I don't know, then maybe there's other folks that don't know as well. So let me go ahead and do this presentation. That's why I appreciate it.
Good job.
To do this. So yeah. My Unveiled series, you'll never probably hear people that you probably know. I love Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, but I believe they've been recycled enough. And so what I try to do in my Unveiled series is to illuminate phenomenal African Americans that you probably haven't heard of, but you probably need to.
Amen.
So that's why I picked. That's why I picked. Great question, though. Thank you, Autumn.
James Perris.
Yes, ma'am.
This is me, your sister.
Yes.
Oh, actually, I was under Autumn's name, so I'm the one who said that I think you look great with that mustache.
I'm sorry about that, Gail.
But I want to thank you once again for a fantastic presentation. I enjoy hearing about those in history that we're not aware of, or that have been changed to modern movies that we didn't even know. So keep up the good work, and
thank you.
And once again, fantastic job.
Thank you for your support. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank everybody.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Who
am I speaking with?
You don't recognize my voice?
No.
It's your son.
Oh, man. I didn't hear it.
It's all right. It's all right. I won't take offense. But I just want to let you know, beautiful job. It was very insightful. And I'm going to go get a name change to James, Oprah Winfrey, Denzel, Bass, Washington, Perris, just to let you know. You can throw Obama in there too if you want. That's all I got.
You see what I got to work with? This is my family. That's my son. No, thank you. Thank you, Trey, for logging on in April. I appreciate the support. I really do. And I appreciate you telling everyone, also sharing my post and link to other folks can come on. I appreciate it. That's the only way we can get this out, especially with this critical race theory and all these different theories that are out there, and burning books. This is the information that you're probably not going to get in your schools. So it's important, and I think it's family friendly, that you get your kids, get grandkids, cousins, and kind of sit in front of the, of the computer and hear about something that they're probably not going to learn about. And that's one of the reasons why I do the Unveiled presentations, because there's so much information that we don't know. And I know if I was growing up hearing about Bass Reeves, I would have been so proud, because when I was growing up, there wasn't that much stuff that was at least positive in my mind that was representing, African Americans, African American males. So I just think this is a good opportunity to help the culture.
Hey, James.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, great presentation, bro. Renee and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for logging on. Sacramento. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm having folks from all over the country, so I appreciate it, all over the state and all over the country. So I appreciate it. Somebody from Delaware logged in, so I appreciate that. I think it's my niece from Delaware.
I'm here. I'm here.
Hey, man. Thank you, Autumn. Because I know it's 9 o'clock back there.
It is. It is.
Okay. So thank you.
Real quick, because I typed this in the chat, but since I'm talking now, do you have any idea, just a kind of a sneak peek of who you may unveil next?
Ooh, I do, but I don't know. Should I say it? Should I say it?
I do. I think you should. We
Okay,
all
A
want to
teaser for people to join next time.
Okay, my wife is saying no, but if I say it, then you guys will go research it already, right?
No, we're gonna wait on you. I don't need you to do what you're gonna do. I just follow up.
Well, I have a few on my plate. So since I have a few, I won't say those few. So just look at my posts, my Facebook posts, and I'll just send them out. And and I really appreciate it if you would share it. Like I tell folks, it doesn't cost anything to share a post, but it may help somebody learn something that they really don't know about. So yeah, so hopefully we're in February, probably within the next year or so, I'll probably do another Unveiled. And just tell your friends and family, like this, we have a good time. It's family friendly, and I think it's just good, fun information that we really need to kind of know. Thank you, Autumn. Good question, though.
I'm gonna talk to Aunt Mary later.
Amen.
Hi, James, we have a question from Doc Jeffries. He said he loved the presentation. He also wants to know if Mr. Bass Reeves, if he lived well financially, and was his pay similar to his white counterparts?
Well, I understood. Okay, great question. One, he got paid well and he lived well, because when you were a U.S. Deputy Marshal, what happened was that you were given a small stipend, but you really made your money off of writs. And they would give you a writ and you had like 30 days or X amount of time to go execute that writ, and then you get paid for them. So that's why he never turned down one. And so for what I understood, if you look at his clothes, he was always, well dressed, and he lived well. In terms of the pay, I believe the pay was set. I don't think there was any really disparity, because if you weren't bringing in really any outlaws, then you probably weren't making that much money. And to have 3,000 arrests and bringing them in to get paid, so you know that was his livelihood. And so yeah, so I believe that he lived well. He lived well. He lived well. Good question. Great question.
Right. Does anyone else have any other questions before we close out? You do have a lot of positive comments, James, and it's hard to read them all, so I'll definitely share them with you afterwards.
Okay. I just in closing, I just want to say, and this is truly from the bottom of my heart, I truly appreciate everybody logging on. I know that there's a lot of Zoom, and you may even have Zoom fatigue because of the COVID. We had to do anything by Zoom. I look forward to doing this in person, but I do appreciate it doing it on Zoom because I get people from all around the country. And I just thank you for logging on. There's other places you could have been at, and there's so much other content coming in for Black History Month. So I try to do this not only in Black History Month, but outside of Black History Month, just to show that there is an audience for what I do, to other than just February. So sometimes you may hear me do it in the middle of the year or in the summertime. But hopefully I can get back to doing them in person. I really miss seeing actual folks and working with everybody and seeing everybody. But like I said, once again, thank you so much, and for telling your friends and families. And definitely I'll see you next time. I really appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you, Charmaine, and thank you, friends of the library.
You're very welcome, James. Would you like to share your contact info for anyone here who is new and has any questions for you?
Let me see where I'm at here. Yeah, you can contact me. This is my email, this is my phone number. And believe it or not, I get emails from people saying, hey, James, have you heard about this person? Can you look at it? Phone calls. I received a letter in the mail today from somebody said, hey, James, and he sent me an actual article about, some prominent African Americans. I was like, that is so great. So I get it from, all around, people giving me little notes. Hey, James, maybe because they want me to, research it, not them, but I like doing it. And so I appreciate any input. No one's too trivial. There is a screening process, because I get so many, I can't do everybody, but I do the ones that I think that were really one that kind of captivates me and, inspires me. And so if you send it to them, I don't do them, don't get offended. It's just that I do get a lot, and I just try to do the ones that I think people will really be interested in. Thank you. So yeah, this is my contact information. Give me a call, give me an email. And last thing before we leave, if you like the presentation, please contact the Moreno Valley Library, Maria Serrano and Charmaine Mendez, because so far, I think they told me last time, I have the highest participants through the library that they've had. So that's why I really appreciate you guys coming on. So tell them, if you like it, and so hopefully they'll have me back to do more.
Thank you so much, James, for the wonderful, informative presentation. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you for being here, for your support of this programming, and special thank you again to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring this program. Have a good night, everyone, and be safe.